So closing.
President Trump's European travel ban went into effect yesterday with thousands of flights canceled due to coronavirus concerns. So I think the big question so many are wondering, how is the airline industry going to stay afloat?
Speaking to us live on the phone right now from Washington, D.C. is transportation analyst Seth Kaplan. Good morning, Seth. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. First of all, let's talk about how the airline industry is responding in terms of staffing and really trying to keep business open.
Yeah, this is unprecedented. I know that's a word that's sometimes tossed around, but we're talking from a financial standpoint for airlines, worse than 9/11. With 9/11, that awful first day was the worst day, and then there was recovery financially, at least. You know, I'm not talking about the tragedy, obviously. In this case, nobody knows how long it's going to go on. These airlines went into this crisis in stronger shape than they did that crisis, and incredibly, even though they're absolutely slashing their schedules, they themselves have not yet laid off any direct employees, even though there's all kinds of other impact in the industry. But the question is, how long can that go on? I mean, 9/11, within a week and a half after it, you had 75,000 U.S. airline jobs lost.
So speaking about jobs this morning, are jobs in jeopardy? And if so, which are the most vulnerable?
Well, yeah, these airlines are doing everything possible to try to think for the long term. That's what they seem to be doing anyway, and thinking, you know, we don't want to anger these employees when the next round of union negotiations comes up and that sort of thing. So I think if they could be sure that this was a 2 or 3 month thing, they would try to figure out a way to get through it. But at some point, that's not going to be tenable. I mean, we'll see if they get a government bailout. But, an airline like Delta or Southwest, those airlines came into this in very strong shape. An airline like American, not as strong, stronger than it used to be, stronger than a lot of other airlines around the world that are already, in some cases, going out of business because of this. But at some point here, if these airlines are not able to fly to a lot of other places they usually fly, and then the planes that are flying are empty, it seems like it's really only a matter of time for employees who really just a couple months ago thought that they worked in an industry that had finally become stable.
So can you talk about, we're seeing a lot of people who are traveling or trying to cancel their flights or trying to figure out what's going on. They spend a lot of time on hold. They can't figure out anything online. What can travelers do in the middle of all this, craziness?
Yeah, so one thing is, obviously, a lot of people don't want to travel, and you understand why they don't. But there's no hurry to cancel your trip if it's not coming up really soon. And in fact, there's an advantage to waiting, and I'll explain that. If the airline cancels on you, then very often you could be entitled to a full refund rather than just a credit. So if you're traveling 3 or 4 weeks from now and you're thinking, I'm probably not going to make that trip, I mean, that might be right, but it's just worth waiting to see if the airline takes the flight out of the schedule, and it depends on the airline, but some of them are going to say, hey, just click here and you can actually get your money back. But on the other hand, don't forget to cancel, because if you just don't show up for a flight, then you could be out the money. So if you're traveling a few weeks from now, just kind of put it on your calendar for a day or two before then, see how things are then. They might not be much better, but at that time you can cancel. Right now, hold times for airlines, by the way, I'm hearing 6 hours and more if you're trying to get through on the phone. So, of course, try the computer, try the app. If that doesn't work, one other tip, if you're flying one of those global airlines, Delta, American, United, that have reservation centers around the world, maybe use WhatsApp or any other way that you have to call free internationally. Look up a number somewhere else in the world. I mean, not Italy, not France, obviously, but, a place like Japan maybe, where the real crush happened a few weeks ago and everybody's used to it by now. Call over there, press the option for English. You might get through more quickly that way. And American Airlines, I should say, is asking people, if you're not flying within the next 72 hours, not to call, to allow them to deal with the people who need to do something urgently. And that's probably good advice in general. And again, no real advantage to calling now anyway if you're not scheduled to travel soon.
Seth, I'm guessing you don't work for an airline, but I'm kind of curious because every time I talk to someone who's flown over the past week, they say they've been on a really big aircraft. No one is on the plane, and I'm just wondering, all that gasoline is being wasted. At any point, do you think the airlines are just going to say, is it really worth using all this gas to fly 3 people across the country?
That's a great question, and I've been hearing those kinds of reports too. No, I mean, I'm a journalist, analyst, just like you. So I don't work for these companies. these airline schedules are intricate, right? So let's say just in a normal time, right? I'll talk to people sometimes who say, yeah, I was on this empty flight. Why did they operate it? And the answer usually is, well, because the return trip back, right? Picture a flight from, Los Angeles to Denver, and for whatever reason it's empty. Even, it could happen on a normal day. Well, maybe the flight back is scheduled to be full. Maybe the crew has to be positioned to somewhere else. Normally, it's more complicated to cancel a flight than not. But right now, no, you're right. So many flights are empty that just from an economic standpoint, airlines are, it's going to make sense for them to fly less. And in fact, they're doing that. I mean, Delta parked 300 airplanes, and American just announced 75% of their international schedule is going to be cut. So they're winding it down in kind of an orderly way. It could cause, what they would say is it would cause more harm than good to just sort of cancel that one flight at the last minute. But you're right, less people traveling. At least with all the bad in the world, let's have one good thing be less carbon emissions, right?
Great advice, good information. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
For
thanks,
more
Seth.
information from Seth, you can find him online at sethdkaplan.com. You can also hear his travel analysis on the NPR show Here and Now. Seth, thank you for that. All right, we're going to send it over to Liberty.
Let's talk about that rain. We are still seeing rain and snow